everyone. Hi. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge that we are meeting on a stolen land. As a Palestinian, I stand here in deep solidarity with the indigenous struggles across this continent. I did not come here to speak of a crisis. I came to expose a structure, a system, a colonial engine still roaring in the 21st century. My name is Sarah Al-Asfar. I am a student, an activist, and the daughter of the West Bank. I have walked through checkpoints that divide not just land, but time, memory, and breath. I have seen rooftops of ancient cities overtaken by settlements and families disposed before sunrise. This is not a metaphor. This is apartheid. And the Palestinian cause is not a local one. It's a global map of resistance. Let me take you deeper, because the Palestinian struggle isn't just about borders. It actually reaches across time and across systems. The Palestinian cause is not a single issue story. It's a vast, it holds layers. Our fight is historical because in the Nakba in 1947 and 1948 was not an isolated event. It was a blueprint, carefully crafted under British rule, then handed off to Zionists. If we can move to the next slide, please, to the slide after. This is a picture of one of the refugee camps in 1948 in the Jordan Valley. And if we move to the second slide, this is, yeah, this slide is okay. This is exactly the same spot that the refugee camp was in, and they hold an annual Israeli yoga festival in this place. A lot of people are familiar with this place because it's named under one of the peace agreements happening between Jordan and Israel, which is Wadi Araba, or the Valley of Araba. It is political. Oslo is not just a solution, it was a trap. James, if you can move to the next slide, please. Zones A, B, and C, as you can see behind me, they are not anatomy. They are a jigsaw puzzle designed to fragment and control. It is environmental, not only because they burn olive trees older than nation states, but because they dump nuclear and toxic waste near our homes. They poison our soil. They redirect our rivers and divert our water, only to sell it back to us, but also to fill settlers' pools with it. It is cultural, legal, technological. Occupation is total. But before this structure, before the domination, before the bulldozers and checkpoints, there was something else. And I'd really like you guys to follow up with me on this part, because this is very important. Let me take you through time. In 1897, when Herzl was drawing imaginary borders in Basel, Al-Husseini families, if we can, please, James, move to the next slide. Al-Husseini family in Jerusalem was laying real stone, building the Oriental House. This Oriental House is a house that would later become a hub of the Palestinian diplomacy, resistance, dignity. And by the way, later on will become the headquarters of the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, in the 80s. We were building our future. In 1917, as Britain signed the Balfour Declaration without consulting a single Palestinian, of course. Palestinians were protesting in the streets, writing political critiques, and organizing and shaping their future of their land. If we can move to the next slide, James, please. In the 1920, when Zionist militias were forming and early settlements were being established, we had already opened the first airport in the region. I'm not only talking about Palestine, I'm talking about the whole Arab region. This is Qalandia Airport. We were not isolated, we were connected. To the next slide, please, James. In 1927, the Zionist strategists were still debating immigration policies. The Lama brothers filmed the first Arab movie, and this is the poster of the movie. And this is very important to understand that the first Arab movie was filmed, directed by two Palestinian brothers. And in 1929, when most women in Europe did not even have the right to vote, Palestinian women held a national Congress in Jerusalem to discuss political, social, and economical issues. If we can move to the next slide, please. This is a picture from that meeting. Let me be clear here. What I'm trying to say here is that Palestine was not just inhabited, it was thriving. We had cinemas, universities, trade routes, libraries, unions, poetry, oranges exported from Java, and roses exported from Gaza to Paris. If we can move to the next slide, please, James. this is the picture of the harvesting of oranges from Jaffa. To the next slide, please, James. In the documentary Tantura, a former member of the Haganah militias recalls that what they saw before committing the massacre. He says, before we did what we did, we saw them living like Europeans, comfortable homes, music, culture, life. But then they lined up people and erased them. Why Palestine? This is a very important question. Why not live with the people? Why they didn't want to live with the people? Why they had to erase them? Why did they have to live over them? This is the beautiful Tantura, a very beautiful city with a very, very sad history. And when Oslo came, we were told, sign here, and in 5 years you will have a state. They didn't want this future for us so badly that they had to kill Rabin to stop it. To make this a bit wider, the Oslo Accords gave Israel the right for safe existence, but Israeli governments later turned against this very agreement. Statements by Israeli officials have made the intentions very clear. They never wanted to commit to peace, and yet, for decades, long before occupation, Palestinians have shown their belief in coexistence, in living alongside others, and in accepting religion and ethnic difference. And since then, we have been handed two options: concede more or resist harder. We have tried everything. Peaceful resistance. Peaceful resistance actually was the path for many years, but the violence of the occupation and its shutting down to any political horizon led to other forms of resistance. We have signed peace accords. We sat on negotiation tables. We rewrote our pact for coexistence. We accepted a state only on 22% of our land. We agreed to economical partnership, to border security conditions, to international monitoring. And after all of this, we appealed for the international law dozens of times. We knocked on the doors of the UN. We knocked on the doors of the ICC. We have tried diplomacy. We have tried popular resistance, and we've even tried armed resistance. And what is the result for all of that? We are now in the exact same place Hind Rajab was. No one moves, no one answers, and actually no one can move. To make sure that history never forgets what they found when they arrived, a nation in full bloom. To the next slide, please, James. Settlers does not arrive by accident. They arrive by design. From Hebron to Ramallah, from Jericho to Silwan, settlers follow a pattern. Always the hilltops, as you can see from this picture and the picture after. Always, always on the hilltops. The strategic vantage points. Always the same blueprint. And in the picture after, this is me. This is a picture I took on my phone standing few steps away from a settlement that is 10 minutes away from my house. This is Ramallah. Moving to Hebron. Next slide, please, James. The building over our old city. They have built over the city, not beside it, above it. And as if they needed to look down on us to justify their presence. And the roads segregated, apartheid in concrete. One road wide and manicured for settlers, another cracked and narrowed for Palestinians. And this is not an accident. This is a copy-paste operation across every inch of the West Bank. It is systematic, strategic, coldly efficient. But it does not end with geography. It escalates into violence, into fire. This is the old city of Hebron. If you, James, can go back one slide, please. Another slide, please. This is the old city of Hebron, and as you can see, the settlement was built on top of the old city, and the settlers violated the Palestinians and their shops on a daily basis, that they kept throwing glass and they kept throwing trash on Palestinians and injured hundreds of Palestinians on a daily basis. And the Palestinians had to add this net on top of the old city to stop settlers from this violation. But after that, James, to the next slide, please. This did not stop the settlers. These are the settlers guarded by the Israeli soldiers in the same old city. And this invasion, the daily interruption and the daily accusation of the lives of the people in the old city of Hebron led to, the next slide, please, James, to closing the old city. It's no longer functioning, unfortunately. And when the Palestinians replied back, this is what they did. They arrested a child, all of these arresting a child because he was defending his father's shop in the old city of Hebron. From Hebron, let's move to Nablus. I want to call their names. Muhammad Abu Khdair, a 16-year-old, this guy, this beautiful child was 16-year-old when he was burnt alive by an Israeli settler. Tariq, his cousin, the picture after, was actually beaten unconscious. The people of Hawara, whose homes and cars are set into fire by settlers as soldiers either stood by or even joined in. They come with the court orders in one hand and with guns in the other hand. And when we rise, they send the musta'ribin, the picture after, please. These are the musta'ribin. I don't know what is the equivalent English name for this force, but these are a special forces masked as Palestinians. They look like us, speak like us, but they inject and they arrest. They are infused between us so that you start thinking that they are one of us, but then suddenly we are betrayed. And the picture after, as you can see, that's a very recent photo of the Musta'ribin squad in Jenin Hospital. But physical violence is not the only one tool. They also use data, algorithms, and spyware. They digitize occupation. They profile us. The Blue Wolf app photograph, and the picture after, James, yes, please. The Blue Wolf app photographs our faces, scores our threat levels, okay, and attack us like data. So at checkpoints, our eyes are scanned, our movements logged. This is a predictive policing exported from the West Bank to the world. Civilians field tested on Palestinians. This is how they advertise for their solutions, as tested on Palestinians. This is not a failure of law. This is very important to understand. This is not a failure of law. This is law. This is the law. It's a system that smiles for cameras while setting villages on fire. If we can go to the next slide, please. The slide after. Yes. If Daniela Wise, a settler leader, is nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, the same person who said, erase Gaza so settlers can see the sea, she's nominated to the Peace Prize, to Nobel Peace Prize. And if Israel ignores 45 UN resolutions, if every humanitarian aid agency now admits that they cannot deliver food to Israel, they won't let them. So, they cannot deliver food to Gaza, I'm sorry. Israel won't let them, and no one will stop them. So no, we are no longer waiting. Liberation will not come from Geneva. It will come from the ground. We resist not because we are fearless, but because we refuse to vanish. In Gaza in 2019, people marched to the fence with nothing but the flags and dreams in their hands. In Beita, villagers let fire. James, to the next slide, please. Yes, this is a very beautiful picture of the people of Beita. Beita, a very beautiful village. Actually, it's next to my village, and I remember this very important thing that our village, we are very proud because we were the suppliers of the tires for this village. So they let fire every day, every night, actually, to stop settlement from taking their hill. In Ramallah, we walked to Qalandia. Qalandia, this is the checkpoint between Ramallah and Jerusalem. We walked towards Qalandia by the thousands in 2014. Our resistance is not a single act, it's a language. From hunger strikes to poetry, from salt harvesting to underground schools. But even resistance needs a compass. We need not just fire, but direction. If you fight imperialism, racism, capitalism, then this is your fight too. We name the system, not a conflict, settler colonialism. We use BDS not as a slogan, but as a strategic lever. We unify the fragment geographics. Gaza, the Palestinian of the 48, the Palestinians of the West Bank, the diaspora, all under one voice. We push for a decolonized Palestine, not two states, not Bantustans, one land, one future for all, and one equal rights for everyone. This is not about revenge, this is about return, this is about repair, and about rebirth. And thank you. And if if that sounds radical, it's because colonization made justice look like a threat. Do not pity us, guys. I'm talking seriously. Do not pity us, okay? Organize with us. Liberation won't come from institutions or diplomacy. It will come from the streets, from classrooms, from unions, from refugee camps, from the Arab working class rising against oppressive regimes complicit in our occupation. These regimes fear that the Palestinian cause will awaken their own people because it will expose the same system, the oppressive system, the corruption, and the colonial legacy. That's why Arab working class matters, because they, like us, live under regimes that fears justice, because our liberation is bound to theirs, and because no revolution can survive in a region where dictators protect occupation more fearlessly than they protect their own people. It won't be full until a shared uprising from Palestine to Cairo to Amman. And as Ghassan Kanafani said, the Palestinian cause is not the cause for Palestinians only, but it's the cause for every revolutionary. So I ask you, by the show of hands, if you are against war, against imperialism, against supremacy, then this is your cause too.
I'd also like to acknowledge that we're meeting here on Aboriginal land, the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, which has never been ceded and whose fight for liberation, like the fight for liberation in Palestine, continues today. After a year and a half of resistance, of armed struggle, of international protests, Israel still wages a vicious genocide against Palestine. I mean, it's hard to keep up with the horror, just, day in and day out. Israel, it broke unilaterally the recent ceasefire to continue waging that genocide. Israel's Defence Minister, Israel Katz, has just announced that its army will stay in Gaza, Lebanon and Syria indefinitely. These are war crimes. Israel's escalated ground operation in Gaza directly references Donald Trump's open calls for ethnic cleansing. And as Israel continues its assault and still receives the backing of Western imperialism, how Palestine can be free is a crucial question. The stakes are very high, both in the region and the wider world. I think that there are now millions of people around the globe who recognise that Israel is a racist and apartheid state, just like South Africa was. The South African regime was broken through a combination of internal resistance and an international solidarity movement. And there are important parallels for the Palestinian struggle, but also crucial differences. All settler colonialisms are not the same. So the apartheid regime served the interests of white capitalists in mining and farming, supplying them with cheap black labour. A white minority ruled over a black majority with vicious repression and relied on exploitation. But by the 1970s, the South African economy was dependent on a skilled black working class in the major cities. And that meant that black workers had the power to strike at the heart of the apartheid system. And it was general strikes that finally brought the apartheid regime down. Israel too uses apartheid to divide and rule over the Palestinians. But Zionist settler colonialism isn't just based on a Jewish minority exploiting a Palestinian majority. Israel does exploit some Palestinian labour. For example, it uses what it calls migrant labour from the West Bank. And the Palestinian general strike in 2021 did have some impact on the Israeli economy. But Palestinian workers are a small minority in the overall workforce and are kept out of strategic sectors like military and tech. And that means that the Palestinian working class doesn't wield the same power as in South Africa. It also means the Israeli working class as a social force isn't going to break with Zionism. So there are class battles within Israel. You've seen strikes and protests against Benjamin Netanyahu's far-right government, but they are divisions over the spoils of colonialism. The protests in Israel against the war don't have any Palestinians on them. There were attempts on the early ones to bring Palestinian flags. They were kicked off. They're only calling to return the Israeli hostages and not for an end to the genocide. And so it means we need to look outside of Israel, outside of Palestine, for a force that can break Zionism. The Arab states have paid lip service to the cause of Palestinians, but betrayed the Palestinian resistance time and time again. So you've seen regimes like Egypt and Jordan are part of the United States imperial infrastructure in the Middle East, and they push through their own vicious neoliberal policies at home. A revolution against those regimes would be a blow to imperialism, weaken Israel, and put social transformation on the table. It would help Palestinian resistance and strike a blow against Zionism. And that's what we saw a glimpse of in the Arab Spring in 2011. You had the revolution that got rid of Mubarak. It also opened the Rafah crossing between Egypt and Palestine, Egypt and Gaza, for that sort of solidarity. Other regional powers are not allies of the Palestinians either. So Iran, so-called part of the axis of resistance, its main priority is not opposing Israel, but maintaining its own wealth and power in the region. So despite the genocide in Gaza and subsequent Israeli attacks on Lebanon and Syria, the so-called axis of resistance has been extremely restrained. A Hamas official even told Reuters that Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, had asked Hamas to silence those who are calling for greater action to support it. I mean, it is the Iranian working class who you've seen come out in the Green Revolution, and again, Women Life Freedom, who holds the possibilities of solidarity. And there was tension in that example I mentioned regarding Hamas, but Hamas has also looked to consolidate support in regimes at the top rather than mass movements from below, leaving it isolated at times. The Palestinians have every right to resist by any means necessary. They have our unconditional support in their fight for freedom. But solidarity with the struggle of oppressed people doesn't remove the need for discussion about tactics and strategy. And I think the reasons for the decline of the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organisation, and the historic organisations of the Palestinian left lie primarily in their prioritisation of military strategies. The bureaucratic competition between the PLO's factions over funding and support from different regimes in the area narrowed the space for organising that could unleash the creative energy of ordinary people through struggle from below. There was also Stalin's sort of stagist theory that prioritised the national struggle above liberation from exploitation or oppression, and sort of smothered some of the revolutionary dynamics. And it was that failure of that nationalist strategy that led to the rise of Hamas because of the compromises, because of the betrayals. Sarah mentioned the Oslo Accords and Ghassan Kanafani. I mean, the one quote from him that always sticks in my mind is talking about the negotiations with Israel as a conversation between the neck and the sword, which tragically proved to be true. But Hamas is repeating some of the same strategic mistakes of the PLO. Like the PLO, they look to Arab ruling classes for support. They've got a policy of non-intervention non-interference in Arab countries. Just one example from 2022, when Islamic Jihad organised a rally in solidarity with Yemen and chanted anti-Saudi slogans, Hamas distanced itself, saying that Hamas affirms these chants don't reflect the movement's well-known firm stances and policies of non-interference in affairs of other countries. And so today, the questions of strategy have been brought back to the surface due to the Arab revolutions and counter-revolutions since 2011, because of Hamas's offensive on October 7th and the brutal Israeli response. And there's a new Palestinian left which is growing, particularly in the diaspora. And I think the global protests for Palestine have enormous potential. Millions have protested for Palestine around the world and in Egypt. I mean, just in March just gone, there were massive protests of tens of thousands that erupted in Amman, in Jordan. They took to the streets against Israel's latest airstrikes on Gaza. They chanted "End the occupation" and demanded that Jordan cancel its peace treaty with Israel. In Egypt as well, there were tens of thousands who protested for Palestine. The Egyptian protests were a bit different. They were called by groups close to the regime, so effectively, regime protests, but nonetheless show the pressure that the Egyptian government is under when it comes to Palestine, that they feel the need to do that. What we're not seeing yet, still because of some of the counter-revolution and the pressure on the Arab working class, is workers who are in the protest acting as workers to take strike action against Israel. You know, it was workers' actions that brought down Mubarak in Egypt in 2011, and the same potential is there. Workers in the region have the potential to open the Rafah crossing, to cut off oil supplies to Israel, or in Egypt to cut off global trade by shutting the Suez Canal if Israel won't stop the bombing. And to do that, they need parties, you know, socialist parties that would openly call and organise for such actions. In the West, the stakes are also high. Another quote I came across recently, the CEO of Palantir, a military spyware company used by Israel in bombing Gaza, said, "We think these things happening across colleges, campuses in the US are a sideshow. No, they are the show. If we lose the intellectual debate, you will not be able to deploy an army in the West ever." And he might be exaggerating a little bit for his own ends, but his comments are not so far off the mark about what breaking imperial support for Israel could mean, about what is at stake for the West. And so I think here in Australia, we can play our part in making Israel into pariah state. The Israeli government still funds and politically defends Israel. Dutton wants to invite Netanyahu here. He released a video just yesterday saying he would willingly ignore international law, the International Criminal Court, and invite Netanyahu here. When Trump called for ethnic cleansing, Albanese was silent, and Dutton called Trump a big thinker. This is the response of Australia's leaders. You know, rather than sanction Israel, they're using false accusations of anti-Semitism to sanction those who speak out against genocide. You know, our rights to freedom of speech here are being curtailed to enable the continuation of a world historic crime. And so we need to do everything we can to crack that, to keep building the Palestine rallies, to build solidarity against the backlash, and to build the political understanding of how things like the university new definition of anti-Semitism are being used against the Palestine movement. We particularly need to continue to build support within the union movement, and that's one of the things that teachers and school staff for Palestine have been doing, building a rank and file group within the teachers' union. Just in the last week in the United Kingdom, the Teachers Union passed a motion for the union to advertise workplace days of action called by the Palestine Solidarity campaign and Stop the War for Nakba Day, May 15. The motion also called on the union to build a campaign with other organisations to challenge armed companies being invited into schools and college. And I think we need to replicate that kind of response here. I mean, I think in discussion, you know, people should feel free to talk both about strategy for the movement here as well as the wider political questions. And to finish up, I think our liberation is tied to the liberation of Palestine. You know, the horror of Gaza is acceptable and necessary to our leaders. It is being carried out by the West. The West could put a stop to it at any moment. The horror of Gaza needs to be a warning for us that we need a different world. We need a world in which ordinary people, which workers make decisions for workers, that we need a socialist world in which these sorts of things do not happen. Thank you.